Well, let us officially say, Amanda, welcome to the show. Thanks for being on Camp Nightmare.
I mean, it was great to see you at Creature Feature.
Yeah, we were so flattered that you were like, I'm gonna come on your show.
We love Creature Feature because we get to hang out and meet new people and actually get the chance, unlike certain really congested festivals and conventions, to actually have conversations. So we're glad to be able to have you here and be able to talk more with you.
It's an exceptional show.
It is. It is.
And like I said, we've been doing this a while, 20 years now. We started at the 20th anniversary of Fright Night, and Lord have mercy.
Oh my gosh.
We're still doing it. But so I've done a few of these, and the horror fans are exceptional, but this show was rather exceptional.
Yeah.
And you don't think, well, okay, Gettysburg, it's historic.
They got some ghosts.
Yeah, it is haunted, so yeah, that works.
Oh, well, you know what? I imagine so. Oh my God, I didn't think about that.
At least once a year at Creature Feature, one of those elevators stops working entirely with people on it. Like, that's not a joke. That happens. We've been there every year that they've done it. And every year that they've done it, that elevator has stopped with a crowd of people on it. One of them has, and it's absolutely a ghost.
I'm suspicious of those elevators. They're very slow, and I feel like they're very old.
It could be gimmicky on their part. They could have a guy whose job it is to just stop the elevator.
Yeah, oh yeah. But yeah, lots of ghost stories in Gettysburg.
I missed all that. I'll have to go back and
they do the ghost tours and a lot of that kind of stuff. But what was cool at Creature Feature, I was in the theater when you were doing your live commentary for Fright Night. Have you done something like that before, or was that a first?
No, that was a trip.
That was a first?
Wow, that was your first?
You really want us to talk while the movie's being shown.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cool to see it on a big screen. That's the way it was intended to be.
Sure.
Exhibited, obviously, but most people know it from DVD and video and streaming and so forth. Even if you've got a 75, 80-inch screen, it's not the same. But I'm like, it's just going to ruin it for people. And everybody's like, no, look, I think most of the people have seen it before.
Exactly.
So, and I think I told you guys, I can chat it up, not a problem. And I think Steven said one thing, and, Billy chimed in a little bit, but I'm just like, blah, blah, blah. And finally, I just thought, I think I should be quiet. Nobody else is talking, but
no, everyone's there to hear your thoughts.
Yeah.
Did you guys find it hard to just did you become immersed in just watching the movie and be like, oh shit, I'm supposed to say stuff?
Well, believe it or not, there are some scenes that I'm not in.
We always fast forward through those,
Thanks. Me too. But I did fall into them this go round and was just watching the movie. But I also didn't think it was necessarily appropriate for me to be running commentary on a scene I had nothing to do, although I could.
Yeah.
But
did you spend a lot when you were on set? Did you spend a lot of days just there, even if your character wasn't involved that day? Did you find yourself on set, or were you like, that's my day off, I'm taking it?
Day off taking it. The thing is that it was an early, I had done one other feature. I had done back in the day what was called a movie of the week. Mm-hmm. So it's shot like a little film for television. And then when I moved to LA, I did this teen romp that Stephen Jeffries starred in, better known as Fraternity Vacation. And so Fright Night was only really my second feature. And I'm one of those non-squeaky wheels, so I just don't feel all that comfortable saying, and this is what I'm going to do. Now, but I also know that sometimes you're in the way, and they're trying to get work done. And so I would take advantage of things more now. But back then I was just trying to mind my manners.
Sure. Well, I think that Asian experience breed knowledge, right? So
now
you obviously
and contempt and
for sure.
A little rage.
And
Absolutely.
I don't give a fuck.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Plus, also, it should be noted that you became a director, and directors need to be squeaky wheels.
Well, true, and that's because that kind of evolved from my growing up doing theater. That's how I started in this.
Okay.
And when you do theater, it's a different animal, and it's really much more of a whole experience all the time. And not that when you're on a soundstage, you're not aware of crew. I, of course, always was, because I love them, because they're the real people usually
right.
on the set. Well, and again, I think that comes from theater. So my respect for all of the elements of production, was just there from the get-go. And then as soon as I got on my first soundstage, my first job was on a soap opera called All My Children. And which
wait, Amanda Cousins,
Die.
right?
Oh, come on. You did a little research?
I didn't.
You weren't even born.
I did research
baby.
enough to get the name right, but I will tell you this. My grandmother, my Grammy Rooks, who was very Southern aristocratic, before she passed away, she forced me to watch so many soap operas and rerun that I do know you from all my like I do have a visual memory of that. Like, I'm not saying that I'm the hugest Amanda Cousins fan ever, but I did know that.
Well, at least you knew that I eventually got a last name. So, I mean, that was kind of a cool first job story in that I'd gone to New York to study with Sandy Meisner, who was one of the master teachers of the group theater, like Strasberg and Stella Adler and blah, blah, blah. And they don't prepare you for anything in terms of career, that you're not allowed to work. You're just there to study, and then you're thrown out to the wolves. Well, wow. I was fortunate enough to get some representation right away, which is critical. And then I started auditioning, and one of my early auditions was All My Children, and that was the only soap I ever watched. Oh. So the fact that I had an opportunity to be in Pine Valley, and I was like, oh my God.
Right.
And I auditioned for the part of Liza Colby, which was a really, truly mean girl. Before Tina Fey wrote the movie, they existed, and it got all the way down between me and, ironically, the actress's name is Marcy Walker, between the two of us, and all my eggs were in that basket. Again, this was one of my early auditions. I'm like, yes, and you sign a contract and you know what you're going to make, and I was salivating, and then I didn't get it.
Oh, no.
And so obviously I was devastated, and just, again, this is what this business is like. But 2 weeks later, they called and they wrote a part in for me, used my name, because back in the day, and I mean, we're talking, Jesus, a lot of years ago, 50, 45, I don't know. There weren't a lot of Amandas running around, and it was kind of a soap opera-y name. And so they wrote the part because the character of Liza was so sociopathic. I mean, she was clearly evil at age 16.
Born bad.
And so they needed a sounding board. Maybe you remember this, Jay, but I had great lines like, I don't know, you think we should do that? I don't think that's a very good idea. Because this character of Liza had no conscience. So that's
right. No, it was very much a physical conscience for her.
Yes,
very
exactly.
Very much.
And what started out as a handful of recurring appearances rolled into a storyline for me. And I ended up staying for 2 years and quit. So I was young enough and dumb enough to quit a paying job, but that was because I was ready to go to LA. And in when was this? Mid 80s, that was the Mecca for film and television production. New York was Broadway and soaps. There weren't a million other production, like Atlanta, every place is a production center now, but it was truly the East Coast or the West Coast.
Yeah.
So that's how that happened. And it was a great launch. I'd never been on a soundstage before. And just to be able to kind of enter in a little more slowly without a lot of fanfare and attention on me, just kind of creep in and get the lay of the land. But once again, I was paying attention to what was going on off stage, like the cameras and behind. And one of the actresses who was very successful, so successful on All My Children, that she was killed, and then they brought her back to life.
Gotta love it.
She was Kitty Kelly.
Yep.
She was whatever, but her name was Francesca James. And an early, I wouldn't say mentor, but example of a woman who started out in front of the camera, who moved behind the camera. So she was directing All My Children when I was on it.
Sure.
And she went on to have quite a successful career producing. I think she ended up running General Hospital for a lot of years and so forth. So
did you see her as like an inspiration to you then? I don't know, were you already thinking about directing at that point? Not at all.
Well, Again, no, not really,
Yeah.
because I was very single-minded with my, I'd gone to school to study acting and performing, and that's what I was setting out to do. But I was made aware, just because I kind of do look beyond myself. I've never had a good healthy dose of narcissism. I've had a lot of confidence and a lot of energy, but not necessarily that self-involved, consumed.
Well, I think
So I
that
always was looking out.
I think the predominant factor there is empathy, right? Like empathy is the difference between confidence and narcissism, right? Like being
That's a
confident,
good one. Yeah,
being
I'll take
being
that.
empathetically confident is fine.
Well, and just paying attention to something other than yourself.
Yep. Yep.
And so I learned a lot in those 2 years that I was in and around that.
Sure.
And I'm
production.
sure
Yeah.
even if you weren't thinking about directing then, I'm sure you've taken a lot of lessons from watching her work and watching them work. Did you find even in Fright Night, which was early on, you're probably not thinking about directing yet, but are there lessons that you learned watching Tom Holland direct that you found yourself using later in life?
Well, again, this was a new experience being on a major motion picture. The other film that I had done with Steven, I had a very small part. He was like in almost every scene, but I was always watching what was going on. But I would think I was so consumed with my responsibility and the work and the job I had to do
Mm-hmm.
on Fright Night that I wasn't it wasn't that relaxed where I felt like I could just kind of cruise, not at all.
Sure.
And Tom, it was interesting. Yeah, I mean, it was an experience with a new director. And he had written a lot of successful films, but this was his first time directing.
Mm-hmm.
And, the stress level just goes through the roof.
Sure.
So you watch how people manage that, how sets are managed. We had a lovely group of producers for Columbia, not just Columbia people, but the people involved with the production entity. And, they help kind of set the tone too on the set and safeguard the director, especially a newbie,
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
because he's got more work to do than anyone else.
Sure.
But I mean, I started paying attention, and I don't think it was ever really that far
Mm-hmm.
from that I might end up behind the camera, or that I might end up directing. I ended up directing when I knew I was going to be directing Married with Children. I ended up going back to where my family was and directing a play, because I wanted to, because I knew theater, and it's a different kind of involvement, but also just to kind of get my toe in the water, my feet wet, whatever, without all the expense that goes with a multi-millions of dollars worth of production.
Sure.
Yeah. Plus,
per episode.
there's like definitely a lot of crossover, I feel like, between your theater background and the soap opera world, in the way that you're not really doing a lot of takes with soap opera stuff. You're kind of performing it multi-camera, is this correct? And you're moving on like theater.
Yeah, you have to say fuck.
If you want them to actually cut.
Uh-huh.
I see,
Exactly.
yeah.
Because
Okay.
they will blah, 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 blah,
Right.
put all kinds of thumpers, which were in, because I was just like deer in headlights. Just keep going.
Well, and was how much of it at that point in the early 80s was still being shot just straight up live? Because I know that like 50s, 60s soap operas were absolutely like it was happening.
Not
in the
at
moment.
all.
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all.
So was
No.
this wisdom like an elder actor passed down to you? Like, if you really mess up, swear profusely and they will cut.
Yeah,
That's
I don't think it
hilarious.
was an elder, but yeah,
is
I
hilarious.
got the skinny early on.
Yeah, okay.
But you don't want to be that actor just doing that all the time
Just
either.
swearing all the time.
That is hilarious.
Yeah, you need to kind of soldier on and not waste people's time and money.
Yeah. It's almost
Sure.
just like you got to give yourself like 3 for the month or something, and you can't go past that.
That's how
Well, if
they
I
cap
got 3 episodes in a month,
Uh-huh.
I was lucky.
You're-
Again, it was a recurring role that kept recurring. And then when I got a major storyline, I worked, you never work 5 days a week in a soap. It would kill you. It's a 20-hour day.
Mm-hmm.
And like a Susan Lucci, would do maybe 3. If it was a huge storyline, maybe 4 days a week. That was unusual, because it's an enormous, weight to carry. I think it was about 100 pages a day. 100 pages a day in a script.
Jordan doesn't know who Susan Lucci is. La Lucci,
That's
man.
okay.
La Lucci.
That means nothing to me.
She was to soap opera land. Okay, how can we say?
She was like Jackie Collins. No. She was like the Meryl Streep of soap operas. Man.
Oh wow! There was occasionally there was Days of Our Lives was on at my house occasionally, so I would like. I remember the man with an eye patch. I'll tell you that.
Yep. I mean, that was every soap opera.
Oh well, actually, he was a heartthrob. That character, I remember that guy. Yeah, that wasn't one of
Stefano. Oh, the name Stefano's coming to mind. This is also all coming back to me now.
Okay. Glad for you.
You've awakened something in me, Amanda.
Happy for you for that.
Well, so when I hear these stories about your early career, I'm immediately struck with the idea that this is clearly something that you love, because no one, like being in the entertainment industry, I know for at least at a lower level, you don't do it unless you really want to do it and love doing it. It's a compulsive thing almost. So I guess one of my huge questions is like, if you weren't, what would you have done if it weren't for acting, if it weren't for directing, if it weren't for that bug? Like, what do you see yourself having done?
I tried early on. I grew up in a different generation. I graduated high school in the mid 70s, and if you were fortunate enough in middle class, upper middle class, you went right on to college. And I had a fine, fortunate childhood, so that was just a given. But I thought it was impractical to try and be an actor and waste my parents' money. And I had enough intelligence to know I can do other things. But what I ended up doing was majoring in colleges and choosing a major like, I'm going to go to this school because they're going to have an architectural dig, and I'm going to go be an archaeologist, for a semester. Insane. And then a lawyer. And so again, there were probably 3 or 4 that I went to, and I finally just said, I'm wasting your money. I'm going to stop.
Good for you.
And
I would have kept wasting that money, but good for you.
Well, it obviously wasn't working, and there were other things involved. Well, actually, for myself personally, I was coming out, and this was, again, the late 70s. There weren't a lot of role models for baby lesbians like myself. And so I was grappling with that, and, wanting to go into a public profession, but not being able to bring all of who I am into it. I mean, there was a lot at play, but I did just take a time out for a minute, kind of grow. And I'm thinking maybe within a year, I asked my parents, I want to go to New York. I want to make a commitment and go study my craft to see if I can do this. And if I can't, I'll come back home and do something else. As I've grown older, and in terms of my interests in my life, one of the things I think I might have gone into was architecture. I come from a family of architects, and I also love design and that sort of thing, and even set design. And I ended up directing off Broadway a few years back, so to be able to work with that as well. So that's it.
I mean, some of my favorite directors started out as art directors and started out in the art design department. Robert Eggers, the guy that directed Nosferatu and The Witch, the reason his movies look like that is because that dude has a background in that.
Yeah, I believe Ridley Scott has an architecture degree as well.
Yep.
That I didn't know, but it's a visual medium.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm a very visual person, just walking the planet, and I have a very kind of specific aesthetic. Some people might call it OCD, but anyway, it worked for making pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's what I loved about directing, really, was I get to build the puzzle instead of just be one piece of it.
Right.
Hell yeah.
Exactly.
Hell yeah.
Was there a moment that you remember that, I guess you were on Married with Children at the time. Was there a moment where you're like, yes, this is what I really want to do, directing?
Okay, so the pilot of Married with Children and the first season and a half were directed by a woman. Her name was Linda Day.
Yep.
She was the loveliest, classiest, loveliest lady. Did not belong on a,
Sure.
Nasty, raunchy, profane set.
You sound like Barbara Bush.
Well, I am. Anyway, I have a mouth like a sailor, but I was so impressed with her. And she was so Married with Children was the last show produced by Norman Lear's company, Embassy Television. By that time, Norman had sold it for $1 zillion. But a lot of the people in the ranks, meaning crew and so forth, the rank and file that built Embassy, they were on our show. And Norman actually cut a check to every one of them.
Hell yes.
But he also hated Married with Children.
Oh, really?
This was not the brand. And a lot of people go, "Oh, it's like All in the Family." Well, not really.
No.
But I get it because it's shot ugly like that. It's flat in your face like All in the Family was. The lighting was strong.
It's authentic, right? Like that's the way it was shot. That's what everybody's living room actually fucking looked like in the 80s. Like,
right. It wasn't pretty.
Yeah, no, and
but he was, and I don't want to digress, but so Linda came up through the ranks in Embassy, and I think she may have started as a script supervisor and then went to an AD and then began directing and had worked with Ron and Michaels, the show creators and showrunners, on other shows for years. So it was really also because this was such a raunchy little show that this classy lady was at the helm. So I really paid attention to that. So that probably planted a pretty big seed. And then I also knew, and even though we launched a new network and it was done a little differently, you're still going to see which characters take off, which characters are going to be what they are and be just that. And especially after David Garrison, the guy who played my first husband, Steve, left the show, it was kind of like, and the kids were growing, and Christina Applegate has more talent in her little finger than
she does.
All of us.
She's one of the most underrated comedic actors I've ever seen.
Oh,
yeah, she's hilarious.
And just as a human being too, just the best of everything.
Yeah.
But so I knew my place. Do you know what I mean? I didn't need to be told, but I was also going to go down with the ship.
Sure.
So that means your salary is only going to get to this level, and that's just what's understood. So at about season 4, I think I renegotiated and they said, well, this is where your money's going to go this season, whatever. Is there anything else you'd like to do? And I said, do you want to write? Are you interested? I said, actually, I'd like to direct.
Hell yes.
Yes.
Said, okay. So I negotiated for one episode. And then I spent, and believe you me, I've been paying attention to a lot of the directors. And we had Linda, and then we had a guy named Jerry Cohen, who was her AD, who moved up and did the majority of Married with Children. But I was also I was also on other sets. So I was learning by watching. And sometimes what not to do.
Okay.
And then I spent a lot of time in the booth, which is back in the day when you were on video cameras, you were in a booth away from the set. And you learn a lot about how the puzzle gets put together. So I studied on my hiatus, the old template for sitcoms where they would write during the summer, you would start production late summer, launch in the fall, run through the spring. And then you'd have a big chunk of time off, kind of like a teacher schedule. And so during those breaks, I studied. I went to USC, took a class at AFI, the American Film Institute, and then just started watching as many directors as I could. So that by the time, I think it was 5th season that it rolled around, they put me on the schedule. Now, this is a tribute to Ron Levitt and Michael Moy, the producers, creators, that they could have just said, Amanda, we're going to pay you the money, but we're really just going to stick with the team that we have right now. But they did. They were like, no, we're going to give you your shot.
Hell yeah.
And they knew I was serious. And they did. And it went really well. I had of course, all the crew backing me up, which was incredible. But the cast as well were very supportive. And I wasn't in that episode so that I could just concentrate on the one job. but then that was the only time that I didn't do both jobs. So one, led to another and another and another and another. By the end of the run, I guess I was behind the camera about half the season.
Yeah. I read you did something like 31 episodes total, which is amazing. So let me ask you this though: who are some of your top directors? Who are your influences? Like, who do you watch and you're like, I want to fucking do that?
Well, okay. I love your enthusiasm and your energy. I'm retired.
That's fair.
Okay. In a nutshell, I'm retired. So I look at work and go, oh my God, that's amazing. How beautiful, or this sucks. More often I say that and switch to something else. I mean, it's awesome that there's so many things to stream, but there are very few things to really enjoy. But, Mike White is a brilliant picture maker in terms of long form television. I mean, in each episode of White Lotus is a little film.
Yep.
But and it's also editing, because it's not just what you're shooting, but how you build it.
Yeah.
Now, back in the day, in terms of what I did, half-hour comedy, like I said, Linda Day was somebody that I really admired. And I Jim Burrows had Cheers at the time. Now he has everything that anybody would want to do.
Because of Cheers. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's not so much that as I really like funny. The funny's on the page. It's got to be on the page. And if that's not working, it doesn't matter what you throw at it in the frame.
Sure.
It's not gonna fly.
Right.
And so when things are funny, that to me is the seal of approval. So I actually ended up going back in front of the camera a few years ago, because I ended up back in LA, not in LA, near, which I swore off. And then I'm like, and I'm basically retired from behind the camera. And I'm like, now what? Well, I think maybe I'll try that acting thing again. Because when Married with Children ended, I shut that door.
Sure.
Because Hollywood, in that time, there were a handful of women doing what I was doing. And I wanted to be taken seriously at that. So I shut the acting door, and then for 35 years, just did the directing thing. But here I am back. And so I thought, well, I got an agent, headshots, oh my God, am I doing this? I mean, it felt so weird and fun.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't anything riding on it. I didn't have to depend on it. And I had some auditions, and then COVID hit.
Oh no.
And it was like, oh, okay, well, is this a sign? But the couple of things I auditioned for, features, ended up manifesting. And the first one was this little just shit show of a low budget film starring John Heder, the guy who played Napoleon Dynamite.
No, yeah.
And he hadn't changed a bit.
Sure.
And when you go away from acting for 40 years, you come back, you're the mom. So John's character is living at home, with his mom. And we had a great time, but it was a great opportunity to sort of get my feet wet. And then the next one was a bigger feature called Bros, which made history for Universal. And I didn't even know all the things like the LGBTQ plus things about that.
That's Billy Eichner, right?
Yeah, Billy. And he co-wrote it. And I'm getting to your answer. He co-wrote it with Nick Stoller, who is a Judd Apatow go-to. Like Nick did Forgetting Sarah Marshall, The Neighbor Scene, a lot of bro movies. But he came up with the idea of a romantic comedy between two guys and brought it to Billy. And then they developed it and wrote it for years. And then COVID, and they were just getting ready to get going, but they came back and did it. And then I didn't even realize that. And it was released in 2022. We shot it in 21.
Yeah, it came right.
And it was released, and I had no idea all the sort of LGBTQ idiosyncrasies about it, meaning when I'm reading the sides to audition and I'm looking at it going, there's got to be a lesbian in this movie. There's just got to be. Why am I reading for the straight mom? Seriously.
Right.
But it turns out that every character in that film, straight or gay character, they hired an LGBTQ plus person if they could find it. my point is, Nick crafted a beautiful film. He did a great job. It is laugh out loud funny.
Oh yeah.
Have you seen it?
I have. Yeah.
It is laugh out loud funny.
Yeah.
And that is what mattered the most to me about the film. Because I thought, if it's going to play, it's going to be because it works comedically.
Yeah.
Like you said, it has to be funny on the page, right?
Right.
It has to be
funny on the page, but it's also, he cut it well. It's edited. It really, because it goes there. You know that, JB.
Sure.
It goes to the edge.
Everything in that movie that's LGBTQ plus is so organic and so natural and so authentic that it's just a romantic comedy. And
you kind of forget that that's what's going on.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the algorithm of Hollywood is such that if you don't open with the numbers that they've determined that you should open with, then it's considered a flop. And they did do that too. They set Bros up in that way. And of course, Billy had a moment in the sun with that. But I'm very proud of the film because of the whole film. It was intense seeing my face a big screen 40 years later, right? Sure. It was like, holy shit, that's what I look like now. Okay.
So let me ask you this then. You take all these years away, you shut the door on acting and focus on directing for 35 years. You come back to do a couple films. Is it surprising that Fright Night, this thing you did in the very beginning of your career, is still talked about, is still bringing you out to conventions, to places like where we met you?
It's mind-blowing is what it is. And so for me, especially these last 20 years of doing these conventions, not only do I love these guys we had a great time doing it in the moment in 1984, 85, but to ride this wave 20 years later and still be as connected as we are and have it go generation to generation to generation of love, of fandom for this movie. So as a director, getting to come out and talk about the two things I'm most known for as an actor ending up being these cult things, right? Because Married with Children and Fright Night have real cult following. So we pinch ourselves still that we get to do this. Yeah. And it's about working off of, it's about feeding off of the fans who step up to say hi and you know, they spend a lot of money going to these things, but I just show up because I set something ahead of time that I don't have to worry about what really ends up happening there, so that I can engage with people, because that's what it's about. They want to be seen. They want you to see them.
Yeah, share the love of this movie that has brought so many people joy. So what do you have coming up? What conventions can people meet you at?
I'm on a plane Friday for Rochester, New York.
Hell yeah.
Not New York, Rochester, Minnesota.
Oh, okay.
And the other Rochester.
The other one.
The second best Rochester that I know of.
And so I'm going to Minneapolis and then going over to the convention. It's called Nerd Out Con.
Sold.
Love it.
And I mean, the names they come up with, you know. So this is probably not just a horror con, but letting people nerd out about the cult things they're into.
Yeah.
Billy, William Ragsdale, Stephen Jeffries, and myself, the three of us are all going to be there again this coming weekend.
That's so much fun.
It's what are those dates? The 12th and 13th. It's just 2 days, Saturday and Sunday. So come see me, not in New York.
In Minnesota.
In Rochester, Minnesota. At the at the Nerd Out Con. Thanks for asking. Yeah, but we've got a few, scheduled throughout the year, because I think there's still a little life behind the 40th anniversary thing.
Sure.
Oh, I'd say there's plenty of life.
That's never going to go away.
Oh, I think Fright Night has stapled itself into horror history, and it's not going anywhere. The fans love it for good reason. The fans love your character for good reason. So I think, hopefully they can meet you and come get some stuff signed. That's always exciting. It's always fun. And thank you so much for spending your time with us.
Yes. This is such a, I think I told you this a Creature Feature. I was texting my wife while we were talking to you saying, honey, I'm talking to Marcy Darcy in real life. And my wife, who is 2 years older than me, we're the exact golden window to, Married with Children absolutely influenced us. She, out of everyone that I met, you were the person that she was like, that didn't happen. I need pictures, or that didn't happen. And I was like, fuck, we didn't think to get a picture.
Listen, as you can see, I could come back and do episode after episode with you, but thanks for having me.
Hey, we'll do it. That. We'll do it again.
It was lovely meeting you. And, I don't believe you me. I get asked here and there to do things, but I know your energy is really positive and fun. And so thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.